Executive Vice President Stella Li confirmed the plan today, actually, the day before the Beijing Motor Show. She said, quote, "Yes, we plan to bring the BYD Seagull to the UK and Europe next year, but it's not the Chinese market Seagull. It will be a European market Seagull. It's a new version. You haven't seen it yet. Even myself, I have not seen it yet. It's based on the original Seagull in China." So she did say some other stuff, basically, but I'll just put that quote in. BYD is going to most likely do the same as they did in Australia with the BYD Dolphin and lengthen its crash structure to meet the standards needed, that are necessary to meet the European NCAP safety test. In Australia, it's called the ANCAP test. Stella Li from BYD also said that because of the cost involved in designing or installing the electronics needed for a 5-star NCAP test, buyers may need to accept a 3 or a 4-star rating, which, just bear in mind, 5 years ago, or 3, 4, 5 years ago, that would have been a 5-star rated car. So perfectly safe car 5 years ago. Few years pass. Now we might question why it's not a 5-star. Maybe it's not as good as an older car. I don't think that's the real case, honestly. So there we have it. They are bringing their A-segment car to Europe next year, but apparently they are going to tweak it, maybe facelift it. We don't know the specifics on that. This makes sense because, for example, when they brought the BYD Dolphin to Australia, they had to extend the bumpers to accompany extra metal underneath, to the tune of almost 30 centimeters, so that it did actually meet the ANCAP, the ANCAP test requirements for 5 stars. So the EU have strange things that they want to do with cars, but also the standards of European vehicles are going up, so they expect them to have more technological wizardry going on in there, so cameras and sensors and weird things. So things such as making the car bing if you go to notify you if you go over a speed limit, or have you should have lane assist set to default on basically every time you get in the car, like an MG4. People often don't like the fact that it has certain settings as a default, and every time you get in the car you have to turn it off. Or if you crash the car, it will call the police for you or the emergency services. These things are all becoming the norm in these coming years. So it would make sense that BYD need to make the BYD Seagull work for Europe. So they may need to alter the height of the headlights, for example, or brake lights, things like that. And I think in Norway they would say "vontirumpe." So I reckon they will try to make it fit all the rules quite well, but also work for the consumer. So such as maybe you could have the option to turn off a default setting, for example, things like that. BYD are pretty good at this sort of thing, making the consumer happy and not have to endure something that's irritating. So I saw a video recently of the Kia EV9, and it bings every time you literally cross over the speed limit, 1 mile per hour. It bings. You can't get rid of it. It's annoying. So being able to turn off things like lane assist or binging noises just the once, and not every time you get in the car, majorly improves how you feel about your car. They know this. So as I've said before as well, the most expensive version with the larger 38.8 kilowatt hour battery is the only one to buy. I think 88% of you seem to agree with that. I did a poll. It is a fraction more expensive, but it has much more range. It will hold its value much more after when you finish with it and you want to sell it. Crucially, it has full, proper battery cooling on it. It has AC cooled liquid battery cooling, which basically means that it will do 100,000 miles or maybe 200,000 miles before you see the battery capacity drop to below 85% or 80%, for example. Nothing ridiculous. As we know from cars with no cooling, like the Nissan Leaf, where they say passive cooling, or other EVs with just a fan that basically wafts a bit of ambient air around the cells, this is not enough. Especially in countries where the air outside often sits above the threshold of about, say, 25, 30 degrees Celsius, like in Brisbane or Texas or hot places in the world. The battery chemistry starts to degrade, literally, simply because it's sitting there warm, and that's an issue, isn't it? We're talking about a very expensive thing in the car. Just briefly, I'm Ben Alexander. This is The Charge Show. Thank you very much for tuning in. It's really nice to see you all coming to the channel. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. That really helps the channel grow and get my numbers bigger. and therefore my videos, and I can spread the message of EVs and smaller, cheaper EVs as well to more people. If we're lucky, like I said in a recent video, they will bring the car to the market with the V2 blade battery with around 30% more capacity. That's meant to be coming in August this year. So it is quite likely that the BYD Seagull next year will have that battery in it. I would like to think so anyway. So like I mentioned in the recent video that I did, which I'll pop at the end of the screen and in the descriptions as a link for you, 30% more range, that's a big deal. I'll just give you an idea of what that means in a minute. That would mean that the BYD Seagull would be a fantastic car basically for anybody on a daily basis. Rarely would it not suit the needs of a person like me. And if that means that twice or 3 times a year I have to sit at a charger for 30 minutes, so be it. I think that's fine. I've saved myself 20,000-30,000 pounds getting a Tesla, and I think that's a win, isn't it? Other cars in the segment, like the Dacia Sandero or the Citroen EC3, they just don't use battery cooling. They just don't. If you think they do, they don't. The information is out there. Some people still say in the comments, but they do, but they don't. They just definitely don't. You can ask Citroen as well and confirm this, but it is written on their website and you can literally see that information out there. They just don't use any cooling. By using terms like passive cooling, it suggests that they are using some sort of cooling. They're not. Having air underneath the batteries is not sufficient at all. Hence why almost, most electric cars these days come with liquid cooling, because that is the required standard, I think. I think the Sandero and the Citroen EC3 though, there is a chance you'll get them to 100,000 miles without losing tons of battery capacity. That is possible, unless you live in a hot place. I think that's really I don't think you're going to do that. It's very unlikely. But if you live anywhere else, like the UK, then it might not be terrible, even though we do have hotter days in summer. So it will likely be fine to go for a long time, I think, if they manage the battery well. But if you live anywhere hot, especially, you just don't buy an EV with no cooling on the battery. It really does need to have liquid AC cooling on it. I did a poll on this, and at the point right now, an hour ago, I checked it, 88% of you agree with me that almost every vehicle on the road other than an e-bike should be coming from the factory with full AC liquid cooling on it. And I'll put that on the screen now for you. It costs bugger all to have that on the car's battery as well. It's not really a big expense. And I think if you were to explain the reality of this to pretty much everyone who's buying an EV, and then you said to them, this one is much more likely to have a healthy battery at 100,000 miles. This one, we don't really know. $1,000 extra, would you want to pay that as an option? I'm pretty sure everyone would pay it, I reckon. If we want to give the car battery a fair chance at lasting 10 years and having a meaningful range at the 10-year mark, then we kind of must buy an EV with AC liquid cooling on it. So I think I've covered that subject enough. The BYD Seagull, as it is now, will do in the UK about 180 miles, maybe 220 if you're really quite frugal with it, in the summer, basically. But if they use the V2 blade battery, which has 30% more dense cells in it, that will be 230 to 280 roughly miles on a full charge. I think we could all agree, if it's priced well, that's going to change the EV landscape in Europe, in the UK. This car, in my comments over the past 12 months, has been the only car to have the response from people that it has. Literally, it has blown up. It's crazy. Literally, everyone is keen to buy one. Stated in capital letters, I would buy one immediately. People love this car. So I think what's even better is that now people can actually be excited about it, but not have to break the bank to buy it, which I think is an exciting thing, because I think maybe a lot of people bought a Tesla or a BYD Atto 3, for example. They wouldn't have bought a car unless it was electric and it was compelling enough like it is. And they may not have wanted to spend the money that they did spend on those cars, but they have anyway because it was just so compelling. Also, the running costs are a lot less. Now, I think, time is passing on. So we're going to have the Model 2 soon, which is not the Model 2. That's just what we dub it. And then also the cars like the BYD Seagull. These cars are coming, and it will become a lot cheaper to drive around. What do you all think about it? Who would buy one tomorrow if it came to the UK or Europe with the V2 blade battery in it? Who would buy one? Let me know in the comments. Currently, it's for sale in other markets for about $20,000 outside of China. So that's 16,000 British pounds or 18,700 euros right now. Who would buy one of those? Let me know in the comments.